Back. Welcome to starting with today's new series, The Power of Creating It. And this month, we're celebrating Women's History Month with the phenomenal lineup. It's an all-star cast, but tonight we're talking to NayMarie of Taji, Adorned by Taji. We are excited to get into it, get to know NayMarie a little bit more, and tell you a little bit more about Black women, entrepreneurship, and how we're doing it all. Thanks for coming in. Thanks for joining us. Hey, Michelle. Hey. All right. It's been a little while since we did a live. So I see the invite. Here we go. Adorned. There we go. All right. Joining now.
Hey,
Hey, friend.
hey, how are you?
I'm great. Hey, Nay. I call you Nay, baby. Way back when, but NayMarie. I am so excited to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us, for sharing your time and space and energy with us. I greatly appreciate it.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Looking all gorgeous and divine and all things.
So do you. I miss your face.
No. Can we start there, though, for a second? Can we start there from, like, you used to do my eyebrows in Meridian Hills.
Yes.
You used to be my backup braider, too, because I had, like, a main braider. Shout out to Natalie. You also braided my ex-boyfriend's hair. So we go way back, but we lived across the hall from each other.
Actually, I don't think he did, and he might still be mad at me for that from 20 years ago. But
you never braided his?
No.
You know,
he's still mad at me.
It was Amanda Carter. She did his hair. Okay, so I've been blessed by your hands several times. And I'm grateful for you. You know, one of the things I was thinking about when we were doing this call is like, our paths have been always what we said they would. Well, like, you've always been a creative spirit. You were in, I believe, arts, like the liberal arts department. What, fine arts?
I was in a lot of departments.
I know you danced, you did hair, you did
I was
eyebrows.
In the partying department, yeah. Partied a lot. I was in the partying department.
That part too. But tell us a little bit about how you got to this point. I know I read in an article that said that your mother did jewelry. You do a lot of things, so I guess we want to focus on the Adorned by Taji, sorry, and how you got to this point where you have been building many empires for a while, and then how are you using your creative juices at this point?
Absolutely. So like you said, I've always been a creative, to the point where when I was at Howard, I never really locked down a major. And then even when I went on to college in New York, it was still like I majored in hospitality, but that was more so the you need a job kind of a major, right? And so I'm working in retail at a restaurant, and this feels like something I could do. But yeah, it wasn't. I used the tools from that degree, but that degree is still like it's over there collecting dust somewhere. But nonetheless, you know, support Black colleges. So after a while, after going through many jobs and getting laid off, I was like, you know, I don't want to work for anybody else. Like I always knew that I never did. I actually went to Howard with the intent of majoring in business and working for myself, but I wasn't in the right major, and I didn't know that when I was at Howard. So that could have made a difference.
Yeah.
But that was always my intent. When I went there, it was like I wanted to, I think, own a hair salon. I think that was my intention back then.
I think that, of course, and that's what you were doing.
It makes sense. It makes sense.
You were doing.
But I know I definitely wanted to be to own my own business. I knew that much. But obviously, you know, life and bills, and you got to pay for stuff. So somebody was like, you need to get a job because you don't know anything about anything right now. But after going through all that, eventually when I got laid off, Will, my partner, for those who don't know who Will is, was like,
your partner.
Everybody, he was like, you know, do you want to? And I was like, no, because we had essentially started Fifth GM, which was our multimedia company. So we had started already producing events in New York, and it was to the point where I was like, I don't want to go back. Like it was a blessing in disguise. I kind of had a feeling it was coming.
Yeah.
I wish I would have planned a little bit better and had some more, you know, cushion in my pocket. But nonetheless, it wasn't something that I was like, that I regretted or that I ever look back on and be like, no, I wish it didn't happen. So we went through the journey for a while of producing events and obviously being creative. I always like to do multiple things. It's never just one thing. I was doing photo retouching for a long time, and then I wasn't finding the right photos for my portfolio. So I was like, I'll do photography. You know, that sounds easy. I could just create my own photos. Photography is not easy for people who think that. Like, don't let your camera phone fool you. There's a big difference between what your phone camera can do and what that digital SLR is going to put you through when you first pick it up. Yeah. But that's the science. I fell in love with it. Photography is still one of my, you know, I call it my day job, right? One of my main sources of income because it's my baby. I've been doing it for over a decade. But through that, I met so many amazing, beautiful people who, you know, have taught me many different things, including one of my hairstylist, ironically, right? So when I was sitting in her chair one day, I was talking about doing a magazine, and originally it was supposed to be a hair magazine. And she's like, Nay, you should do it, you know, you should do it. And I was like, yeah, you know, like I love hype hair and all these kinds of things, but I felt like there was still a certain aesthetic from what, after working with so many master natural hair pioneers, that I felt like I wanted to like put this, you know, big thing together. And then I think it was right after Mike Brown was executed. There were so many people saying, you know, well, we would support Black if we knew where the Black-owned businesses were. And I'm like, well, I'm a Black business. She's a Black business. He's a Black business. There's tons of us out here.
Right.
You know? And so then that actually kind of morphed it more into a cultural publication because I wanted to highlight Black businesses that people felt like that didn't exist, which was okay. Right. I wanted to highlight Black businesses. I wanted to highlight Black beauty. I wanted to highlight our culture in many different facets and, you know, formats that it exists in. And that was what birthed Taji Mag.
Which is phenomenal, right? Like,
thank you.
If you have not, I mean, she has a digital, of course, but you need the print. Your coffee table needs the print. It is the quality, the aesthetics. It's like it's nothing else on the market. Like there you have no peer in that space. And so I'm really applaud you for launching that and getting it done. You know, I think there's a couple things that stood out for me. I think a lot of people think you go into college knowing exactly what you're gonna do. I went to college studying chemistry, hated it. Ended up switching my third year into psychology, loved it, but still didn't want to be a therapist. Like, and I still don't want to be a therapist. So, but how I began to kind of create this path, and I think one of the things you spoke to was like the importance of learning skills by working for people, even if it's a job you didn't love. Like, there are still so many skills that you learn by working. I think there's a new culture saying, hey, we just want to go straight into entrepreneurship, which I think works for some people. But I think for the masses, there's a lot of learning about business, about working with people, about building systems, that there's no substitute. There's no shortcut for that. How do you feel about that?
I agree. I feel like everybody's path is obviously going to be different, right? Absolutely. And people learn in different ways. So like, for photography, I was basically at like YouTube University. Like, that was how I learned most of that. For Taji, it was really trial and error, right? So I put out the first one like a month. Like on November 1st, I registered everything. December 7th, I launched the magazine. Didn't know nothing about journalism. I was a photographer, but I just knew like I could write. You know, I've obviously written thousands of papers throughout college and high school and everything else. But it still wasn't like, I didn't necessarily study journalism to know like this should be in this format and that. But I had Will to kind of help me with layout and aesthetic, but I wasn't a graphic designer. So like, here I am like on my own putting together a whole publication. So Taji was trial and error. But then running a business, right? We already know, we say like, you know, schools don't necessarily teach you life skills. They don't teach you taxes. They're not teaching you, you know, what your 401k when you actually get to a job, like what all that's actually about. So again, like I feel like there are certain things that you can learn in school that help.
Right.
And then there are certain things that you can learn from even apprenticeship, right? If you do an apprenticeship in your field, that would then be able to guide you better to be like, okay, now I'm comfortable going off and doing this on my own. And I think that's also why a lot of us reach back to be like, hey, let me teach you some of the things that I've learned so that you're not up here 17 years later, you know, now reaping the benefits. Like maybe you could reap them in 3 years.
Exactly,
you know?
exactly. I definitely agree. I think you do that a great job with that too, and starting with Today does too. Like, hey, you want to try your hand at something, you want to build some skills. Here's a space where you can try to figure it out under our umbrella that is already incorporated, versus trying to go through all that paperwork, tax, and legal stuff that is required for a business that a lot of people only see the product and the income. There's so much more legality that keeps the business legal.
Exactly. Like I had a professor, and it's ironic because I failed accounting in college, and I was livid because I was like, math is my thing. Like how did I fail accounting? He was a horrible teacher. That was how I failed accounting. So but what I did learn when it finally, because the one thing that he wasn't explaining to everybody was that in accounting, debit and credit just means plus and minus. We're adults, so we're thinking debit and credit like debit and credit cards. So it wasn't, two weren't making, connecting. But that class, even though he was a horrible teacher, I still learned accounting in a manner that I was then able to do accounting for myself in my business. Yeah. And I don't know if I would have grasped it the same way had I not have had that class. So that's why, like, there's certain things in your journey that are always going to be beneficial for you in some way. And like I said, I majored in hospitality, so I'm great on the customer service side of my business as well. Right. There's a lot of professionalism coming at you. Even if you're coming at me kind of crazy, I'm gonna hit you back. We're gonna flip it around, and we're gonna be smiles at the end. So there's a lot of different methods and ways and things that I think were really beneficial throughout my journey that if I didn't experience those things, I wouldn't have had. And then I'm grateful for those tools because, like I said, now I'm able to share them. And even going into Adorned and Taji, which my mother, she was a creative and an artist, but, her having a child and having it to do a lot on her own, education was her field. Like that was the thing that she went into for her every day, being able to support us. Right. But as she got older, she kind of dived into it again. And at this point, I'm already 8 or 9 years into an entrepreneur. So I'm like, yeah, let's go. Let me help you. I can do this and do that. And we can do this. And I built her website and all this other stuff. But again, life was like, yeah, I ain't really got time for this. And but because I had started helping her, I fell in love with it. And then, even though she put it on pause, probably permanently, but she'll still come out and be like, I can make my earrings. And I'm like, yeah, right. But it was something that I was able to then fall in love with. And obviously I have other sisters who create jewelry as well. So learning from them and growing in that space with them, just expanding and realizing that it was another part of me that I really needed and didn't know at the time. And it's becoming one of the things like I'm so passionate about.
I love that. And I think we see the passion in it, right? I have my eye on a couple pieces, so I'm trying to narrow it down. which one I'm going to, I can just buy the rack. One of the things that you bring up about your mother, right? And I think one of the things for me too is once we launched, initially I didn't get it, right? So the link, but by the time we launched our Shape Up, where we went to the barbershops and then was going through photos and seeing my grandmother's beauty shop and then realizing like she was a philanthropist, didn't have that title, but that's what she did. My mother is a philanthropist. She doesn't have an official title, but that's what she does. My dad has always taken care of people in our homes and our families. So these legacies that we've seen have shaped us, whether, consciously or unconsciously, we still find ourselves on this path. One of the things I think I've seen during this global pandemic is this return to African spirituality and this re-awakening. And I think your brands, all of them, have always nodded back to Africa, and built that bridge for us. I think some of that, is definitely you being from New York and having those international hub space, but then also, just who you are. And then how do we begin? How have you seen the shift in conversations where people are looking for more modalities of healing, of spirituality over the last couple of years than you have in previous times?
Well, I think first, I think it really started with us amplifying therapy, right? Because at first everybody was like, Black friends, we didn't talk about our business outside the house. And it's like, okay, well, part of that is a problem, especially when the problem is inside the house. And if I can't talk to you, then who am I supposed to talk to? So right. I think the amplification of therapy helped, right? Because then now you have people who are saying, I went to therapy and it changed my life. And then it was like, okay, well, what else can I do? And then for people who maybe therapy isn't for them, but they still need other ways to heal and learn and grow. Like, okay, well, what else can I do either instead of therapy or in addition to therapy? And I feel like that's where a lot of, self-care and creating your own practices, and, meditating, using crystals, just getting back to your roots and finding things that make sense to you. Like even now, I'm discovering so much about, to your point of, when we realized where our parents were and the things that they did, even though the titles might not have been, exact, we're realizing like my grandparents actually were entrepreneurs. They had a travel agency that they then turned into an art gallery. And I believe I'm doing that in the proper order. I saw that when I was young, when I was growing up, and my grandfather used to say to me, this is going to be yours when you get older. And even though my grandmother was kind of in the background, like, no, like we got kids that it's going to first, but it just him telling me that still made me feel like something could be mine. Like, yeah, whatever she said, I know, I'm not next in order, but what he said, so those little things. And then finding out, recently, like a few months ago, speaking to my grandmother about how my great-grandmother was from New Orleans and her connection to spirituality in that sense that I didn't know. And I always had something drawing me to New Orleans, but I never knew what it was. And it's like, when you start diving into your history and your lineage, things start to make sense after a while.
I love that. And something saying that it's yours, that resonated in my spirit so much. Like, there is inheritance. I think a lot of times we think we have this new wave, of course, that is important around generational wealth. But I think a lot of times we only focus on the money. And I think there's so much more legacy that has been given to us from our ancestors that is worth valuing as much as well, and then we are building upon that from that standpoint. With your pieces with Adorned and Taji, can you talk a little bit about the process and how, let me say, okay, so you did, you have a YouTube where you talk about some of your rituals, which is so informative. And then your website is so...
Yeah, I so just said it all. Thank you.
So good. It's so much information. It's an encyclopedia for like gemstones and like how to navigate that. I think it's so... I haven't seen anything like that where people go that much in depth about where it's such a good source to, especially if you're starting out and trying to navigate such a vast space, that you have some tools. So tell us a little bit about that process. How did you go into, picking out what you wanted to focus on as far as your pieces that are unique and beautiful?
I wanted to... Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, yeah, and healing.
For me, it was, I wanted to create pieces that reflected me, right? So originally when I started making stuff, like I said, I started with my mother, and it kind of had a slightly older aesthetic, right? Like most older women, they don't want like really long things, or like they're like, even now when I'm selling certain things, I have two tiers. Like the top tier has shorter earrings and the bottom tier has longer earrings, and I can literally see like when they walk up to them, okay, your face may not say it, but you just told me your age based on which tier you get into, right?
So true.
So but in doing so, it was like, obviously I started to wear my own stuff because I'm promoting it, but it still didn't feel like it reflected me and my personality. And even though I'm very much so a behind the camera kind of person, my aesthetic is loud in a sense. So I started making pieces, and when I would see certain things, and I'd be like, okay, yes, that's me. No, that's not me. That would be me if it was this way. And then from the healing aspect of it, when I started creating adornments, I didn't even realize that I was actually making them with semi-precious stones until I started reading, getting into gemstones and realizing that my packaging said it. Because at first I thought they were glass beads that were trying to represent. But then I realized that certain spaces where I was purchasing from, they actually were gemstones, which then made me like, yes, like now we're really even diving in even more. So I've been, again, that's a whole science behind, the different properties of certain stones and what they've been most beneficial for, knowing their chakras and their color alignments and all these other amazing, great things. But like you said, it can be a lot of information for somebody who's just started. And I'll get a lot of people who will come to me and the first thing they say is, I'm going through this, what do I need? And so I'm trying to make it easier for people who, if I'm not vending in person, or maybe if they're too shy to, slide into the DM, where they can find that information on their own and then still purchase, whatever is necessary for what they're going for, or going through at the time, whatever, whether it's healing, abundance, protection, whatever they may be looking for. And especially I noticed recently with our people, it's been a lot of anxiety that people are trying to overcome.
Listen.
And then there's been a lot of abundance and wealth that they're trying to welcome into their lives. So I've really been focusing on those two main things. And even like those, they're important to me as well. So I'm like, well, that's easy for me to,
That's where I am. That's what I started reading into for sure. The anxiety this year is a lot of things I'm excited about, but there's also this pool that's calling me into deeper waters, and it's a lot of anxiety around it. I think a lot of things we're talking about is while we are building upon, the legacy and the foundation that our family have left us or leaving us, that we're also walking into uncharted waters. A lot of us are, and so. Yeah. There's a lot that comes with like not knowing, me being first generation college, like there's a lot of things we have not seen yet. And even, the first generation of Black people really going through therapy, right? And really, processing, we're not only processing our trauma, we're processing everybody's trauma who came before us and how it has manifested, and that's heavy work. I think I'm in a balance between trying to give myself grace. One of my friends, Christina, was like, we can't be responsible for breaking every single generational curse. Like we gotta give
somebody after us is gonna have to do some work too. But
also trying to do our best and show up and welcome, abundance in a space where you might not have seen it, where we've been taught so much to like hold on to this scarcity, to just hold on to this little bit and be grateful for that, and we are. But then like what does abundance look like for us? Not only just of course money, but peace, rest, lifestyle, prioritizing family over, I know my parents, they work very, very hard, and saying, hey, we want to prioritize family and community over a job that, really doesn't care about us.
Exactly. And I think I had even probably recently posted a meme that said, like we weren't just passed down generational trauma. We need to acknowledge the excellence that we received as well. Because I feel like a lot of people, we're always like, DNA from whether you are indigenous to this country or whether you were enslaved by this country, we still know that our ancestors went through hell in this country in general. But that doesn't mean that they were like, when we look at all of the amazing things that if you went through all of that and we're still so amazing, like, what is that? Like, how do we tap into more of that?
Absolutely.
And like you said, abundance is something that we weren't necessarily taught, right? Especially throughout a lot of our religious practices, we're basically taught that we need to be humble in this life and to receive in the next life. But it's like, why is it just us? Why does everybody else get to receive in this life and the next life, but only we have to sit back and be like, okay, like we're still technically the servants. Like we still have to serve everybody else, be nice and humble to everybody else. And then because we are, then we'll receive in the next life. But I believe that we can receive in both. Like you can receive now, you can still be humble, you can still serve, and you can still receive. It's that give and take, that balance. And then still whatever you believe happens afterwards, whether you think you go to heaven or whether you think, you know, your spirit comes back or you reincarnate or you go to the ancestral realm, whatever it is you believe, I think you'll still be fine there too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. I love that. I think one of the things that draws people in is your authenticity. How do you feel like that plays a part into building a brand? I think you see a lot of people who turn on for a brand. You know what I'm saying? How do you feel bringing what I know from my experience with you, your full self into your brand?
Honestly, it was hard at first because, again, right, so I still had to break down what we were taught, right? Because the structure is, especially at Howard, specifically doing in the School of B, anybody who was there with me knows I hated that suit. I did not want to wear it. I don't care what day of the week it was. And I was big, so like the suit didn't even fit me. I was angry. I didn't want to wear it. But we're taught a certain level of professionalism, right? And we're taught what professionalism looks like. So the fact that, you know, every now and again I'll throw a curse word into a newsletter, somebody, like even my mom will be like, did you just say it? And I'm like, yeah. And you know why? Because my tribe knows me and they love it. And I'm going to speak how I speak because that's how they speak. You know, they recognize that. They see themselves in me and vice versa. So I feel like if more of us actually showed up as our truest selves inside of our businesses as well, I think that's where the thriving comes from. And shout out to Nancy, a Black Girl PR, because she really helped me formulate my voice, right? It was like I already, excuse me, I already knew where I wanted to go. I still needed somebody to say the yes, you're right. Like, it's fine to do that. And also how to use my voice in a way where it still sounds professional and I'm still getting the point across, right? So you'll know that I'm not just, you know, I'm not going to be ranting or like, I'm actually going to be providing you information. And if I'm telling you a real truth about my story, this is a real truth about whatever I went through, but I'm also going to provide the solutions to what I'm working on in that story as well too. So I think a lot of times, sometimes where we see some people in their authentic selves, but it's just the negative of whatever's going on in their life. And then after a while, people kind of tune it off, right? It's like reality TV. It's cool, but how much of it can we really digest before it's like, all right, y'all are just always fighting. You know, it's like there's no other, you know, substance inside of this. So I feel like being able to tell, like, even recently I told the journey of my skin, which I realized I didn't have pictures of myself during that time that I could even provide in that email to be like, oh, before and after. Like, it was a real thing that I was going through. And I know that it's a real thing that other people go through, because the people who saw me then, who see me now, are like, sis, what did you do? And I'm like, okay, well, here's the story to be told, you know? So I think using our stories to help others is important as well. And sometimes you never know. I'm sending out a newsletter, and if it's hitting thousands of people, I might not necessarily know all of those thousands of people, even if my intent is, okay, 10 people asked me about it. Here's the information in one email for those 10 people. But how many of those other people are receiving this information as well? So I feel like it's extra important to show up as yourself, to use your voice. And then you're going to be more comfortable. Like, if I was doing this interview with you sitting in a suit, I've been sitting here like, yeah, okay. And then I did, and my mom, and she, like, it would have been hella uncomfortable, you know, instead of me just being like, hey, that's my sis. I love you. I'm so happy to see your face, you know, and that's the real, like, that's my truth. I'm legit happy to see your face.
And you know, and I went through the same thing too when I first starting with Today. I think I felt a real sense of needing to prove myself. I think as a Black woman,
Mm-hmm.
to show up in a space to say I was, you know, worthy of being in this space. I had information that was valuable. I think it was both external and internal, right? I think there was this both needing to prove space. And I think that lasted maybe the first year or so. And then I was like, nah, this not even who I am. And once I began to let that go, I was able to really tap into like what really makes sense for me as a leader and then for the organization as a brand. And things begin to, of course, you get into flow, you get into thriving, you get into spaces where people are seeing themselves, and then you're meeting a niche that other people are meeting in a way that other people can't see themselves in. I think that has been really powerful in, you know, inviting people into this group therapy, into this community therapy space. It wouldn't work in suits, and even when we're typically doing prep work for anybody new coming to our space, it's like dress how you normally dress, like going to brunch or going out with your friends or homecoming, like whatever. That is the attire you wear. You know, once you clean, like other than that, like,
right? You know. Like take a shower, but then be home.
And then come on. And really just kind of removing that power dynamic that we often see in white spaces and saying, hey, this doesn't work for us. This is not how learning occurs. This is not how trust is built. This is not how community is built. And so really kind of getting really intentional with that, I think really freed up our path in a way we hadn't seen before.
I absolutely agree. Yeah.
So let's get into the pieces. You have some amazing pieces on right now. So people who aren't familiar, right, to your brand, to your jewelry, can you walk us through some of your favorite pieces, some of your, you know, highest selling like pieces that people love?
I think the two top tier are, so, and I wish I had one of my mannequins out with me, but they're packed for vending later. But are the crowns, right? So the crowns, I feel, are what catapulted the brand because it placed, especially Black women, it amplifies your goddess, right? So they get to feel beautiful, to be their truest selves, to just really recognize, like, you know, we always say, you know, like, walk around with your crown high, you know, adjust your crown, sis, but to actually see it in physical, tangible format for some women, it's just like they're showing up, you know. So whether it's they're going out somewhere special or they're just, I used to run to the grocery store with my crown on, like, what you gonna do? Like, just love it, right?
I love it.
So I think the crowns are one of the highest selling, and then recently on 2/22/22, I released the lip cuffs, and that like went off like wildfire. So I had already had, I think prior to that, the cowrie ear. Oh wait, I had to just make one for a client. So the cowrie ear cuffs. So
beautiful.
This was one of the top sellers, and then I think recently when I released the thank you. That's why we love Will. This is my mannequin.
I love it.
And I actually
can we talk about the cowrie for a little bit, because you know, in African tradition, right, it's used as a source symbol of money, I believe.
Absolutely.
Okay.
They used to use it as currency. So to me, and then also the fact that, you know, cowrie shells can be found at the beach and they come from the ocean. It has a lot of that goddess spirit energy as well. This is why I love being prepped, because sometimes you just have things readily next to you. And
I love you for it. I appreciate it.
So let me show you this really fast.
Gorgeous.
Baby. So different crowns that just, you know, accentuate who we are. So this is obviously one of the more elaborate crowns. that, you know, when you're going out and you need to stun on them real quick, this is the one you go with.
I love it.
And but yeah, so like I was saying, the lip cuffs took off, and I feel like things that are everyday. Let me fix her first before I change. Things that are everyday are always going to be the things that fly off the shelf first, right? So you get to show something that has your spirit in it, something that shows like your elevation, something that shows, you know, whether it's your spirituality or that you're working on your shadow self, whatever it is, something that shows that, you know, you're showing up in that manner. Those are going to be the things that go first. So this is going to be.
That is incredible setting. And I think it's both this thing of, again, this external beauty, but it's also a cue to your inner spirit.
Exactly. So it's bringing out wherever your reflection is, right? Because I'll even have some women say, you know, I'm not there yet, right? Like they'll look at that crown and they'll go, I'm not there yet. And my response to that is, says who?
Ooh,
you know?
Woo. And how many people said, is it true? That's what my therapist said. And who told you that? And why do you believe it's true?
Exactly. Because there's something like, and understandably so, you know, not everybody is going to be big and elaborate and you always want to, you know, go big and, but if you're saying you're not there yet, there's a difference between, you know, oh, that's not my style and I'm not there yet. That means I want to be there, but there's something that's holding me back. There's still a piece of me that says I'm too small for that. Right? So when they say I'm not there yet, my response is generally, says who? Because I feel like
Nay the healer.
if we're running around and we're being our truest selves, then you can't tell me where I am yet, you know?
And I think that's so true. And I think that's one of the beautiful things I feel about being a Black woman, and maybe one of the benefits that I probably experienced at Howard and since then and being in DC is that I have seen my reflection back in so many beautiful Black women, even when I wasn't feeling it myself, that they beckoned me to it in a way that's so gentle and so loving. And I don't think there's any other space that can do that for other than Black women showing up for Black women. Sometimes I say everything I learned from a Black woman. Even if a Black man taught me, he learned from a Black woman. So everything I know a Black woman taught me. And one of the things of that is self-love, and then how we continue to nurture that and grow and evolve, because, you know, self-love at 20 is very different for self-love at 40 for me, and something that I'm still, you know, learning. What do you feel about that as far as making sure you're honoring your own crown, and then the work that you do elevating the crown of other women in your community, in your spaces?
I think oftentimes when it comes to the self-care part, I have to give myself space, right? And it's a little bit harder in this constant content world that we're in right now, you know, because social media doesn't let you not show up, and then next thing you have like 2 eyes on things that you had 1,000 eyes on before. So it's definitely finding that balance, finding that my eye in it all. But really, what I like to do is I take time for myself. And even if it's throughout the day, you know, sometimes like after this, I created a whole bunch of stuff, and then we'll have our talk, and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna go eat and watch my show, you know, and that to me is my space. Like that's what makes me comfortable. Some people, they say, you know, I like to take a bath. I like to read a book. Like whatever your space is, take that time for you and try to find it in whatever ways you can. And, I know it's slightly harder for parents, especially if you're parenting on your own, whether you're a man or a woman. But if your child is old enough, making sure that you're still finding a way to take some time to be like, okay, you know, I got them busy doing something over there. Now let me take 5 seconds for myself. And that 5 seconds is literally your rest time. It's not, I got them busy over there, now let me go work. It's like you have to find the time for yourself to just be like, woosah, because then that's when your excitement comes back, right? Normally it's when I'm not doing something, when I'm like, oh, let me make this. Oh, I wanted to create that. all the ideas come flooding back, and I might not, depending on my, if I'm rested enough, I'll go do it right then, or I'll write it down so that I don't forget to do it when I'm back to working later. And I think it's important for us to take that time and that space just to be like literally shut it down for a little bit, turn the brain off. I know it's hard, especially for those of us who would have had what they consider ADHD, and brain is going like this all day long. And it's like, I'm quiet. How do I quiet? What's quiet? And we're like trying to meditate, and it's like 80 thoughts. And it's like, I said quiet. But still, even inside of that meditation, there's organization now to those thoughts that I feel is still beneficial. So even if I can't get the quiet, it's like I can get the focus to say, oh yeah, I did want to do that, and I'm supposed to do that in order to launch this, which is going to create that, instead of it just being everything is all whirly around every place. So for me, it's definitely creating space for myself just to be, to do whatever I want to do that isn't necessarily all the things that I feel like I'm still supposed to do, because that control is still there in a sense, in terms of, yes, I work for myself, but now I'm still making sure that I'm showing up for my tribe. And inside of that, because I'm doing it on social media, and even though I have a newsletter where I can reach them, it's still you have to do these certain things, otherwise it doesn't necessarily work as well. And making sure that in and of itself isn't affecting me as well, because it did for a very long time.
Right.
Feeling like I always have to do something. I'm always supposed to be, I'm tired. I don't want to do this right now. And then now I'm beating down on myself because I'm tired, because I don't want to do it. Instead of just being like, it's okay, sis, take a break. Like, it's going to be there when you come back regardless. Like, it's really not going anywhere. And then whatever, you can ramp it up. And if it goes back down, that's okay. Life is roller coasters anyway. There's going to be down times at some point. Like, you're not always going to be on the high all the time. Like, you have to go through the low. You learn your lessons through the low. That's when, you're getting your education through the low. So
absolutely. Absolutely. And that resonates with me so much. And I wrestle with that, right? And I'm planning to get better, but it takes so much to produce content. I think people who are do it for leisure don't understand the strategy and the time it takes to do it for a business. It takes a lot in addition to actually doing the actual work for the business,
Exactly. And then when you add on multiple businesses, it's like, okay, wait a second. Listen. And I'm still just one person,
Right. So and so finding that balance and saying, okay, I still want to be intentional with my time, my space. And if we're talking about mental health and wellness, that's our North Star, and I'm not taking care of myself as an owner, then there's a huge conflict there. So I have to be really intentional and trying to, honor that as well. I think one of the things that I wanted to, a couple more things before we close out, but you mentioned Will. I think one of the things, who's an amazing, creative person, entity in and of himself. One of thank you. One of the things that I think is really important for Black women in entrepreneurship is to have a support system. Mm-hmm. So can you talk a little bit about your support system and how that helps you be more sustainable in your work? Because this journey is not.
Listen,
it's not easy. I think a lot of people see the glitz and the glams and the end results, but it is
right.
Too much. So talk about support system, and then definitely how that kicked in through this pandemic. Because I know a lot of businesses, especially Black businesses, have been struggling, ourselves included. How do you begin to kind of regroup in that space?
So Will keeps me really grounded. Because number one, like I said, my brain is usually all over the place. So I can bounce things off of Will, and he'll help certain things make sense if my brain is like, yeah, but then what about this? And what about that? And what about that? And if you ask Will will generally say, like, I told you to do such and such. You didn't listen when I told you to do it a year ago. And I'm like, okay, but we're doing it now. So now what do we have to do? But he helps keep me grounded. He helps keep it fun, because he's like, he's a reflection of me. So and all of the silly things and silly ways that I am, like we share a sense of humor. So if things are too heavy on me, will do his best to raise my spirits, and I really appreciate him for that. And I hope he knows that. But also he's my business partner in a lot of other aspects. Yeah. So when it comes to okay, well, how do we get this bread? You know, it's like I have somebody to literally sit down and brainstorm with. So it's not just always all of the things that are going on inside of my head, and I'm not sure, like, do you think this will work? It should work. And then oftentimes with me, my personality is, if I think of something and I think it's a great idea, I do it. I.e. Taji Mag. Like I said, November 1st, I put out a magazine December 7th. Like, y'all, if you want to do a magazine, don't put it out in a month. Like, take a little bit of time. Just take it out, okay? Like, I don't recommend it. But
when to that point, like, I had this idea for this series, like, what, Thursday of last week? And I hit you up and you was like, yeah, I'll do it on Wednesday. Like, okay,
free next week.
Let's go.
You know, like, but some things are sustainable in that manner. But again, obviously, like, even when you came to me and I'm like, yeah, like, let's do it. Like, some things, when you have that confirmation or somebody to say, like, yes, this could work, and if you need any help, or this is how, you know, you can make it work, it's easier than just trying to do everything on your own. So, and I also think that's the importance of tribe in general, right? So I have Will for that. I have my other sisters who help me out with that. Like I mentioned, Nancy Lee earlier, who from Black Girl PR, she helped me out in a lot of ways. So I feel like having them for all the multiple aspects that they are, like, Will is a multifaceted creative, right? So he does graphic design, illustration, brand identity. So that helps me with that aspect. Like, if I create a logo, if I'm doing a flyer, all of which I learned how to do from Will, you know, that was his thing. And it was essentially him saying, you're going to have to, like, I got to work, so we're going to teach you how to do it, because I can't create everything for you. Like, you're creative, you have talents, you can do this. I believe in you, right? And him saying he believed in me, I'm like, all right, great.
So
maybe I can do it.
So far. Like, it goes so far. And you really only need, like, one confirmation of somebody saying, like, I got you, you can do this. You know what I'm saying?
And then to the point of through the pandemic, honestly, I felt like because it slowed everything down for us, it helped us reorganize in a manner that then catapulted us.
Nice.
Will went back to doing photography, which has been something that he's been passionate about and
crazy.
So he's back on inside of that realm, in addition to, you know, the branding, the identity, the illustration work that he has for certain clients. With me, I got even more into the adornments and really into my studies, because originally I was like, you know, and even now I'll still say, like, you know, people will come to me like, I'm not your shaman. Like, I haven't been doing it for thousands of years. You know, I don't have all the owns down. Like, I don't have it, but I am learning and growing. And what I do know, I am definitely willing to share with you and help you in any way that I can. And the fact that people have come back to me and have told me that it helps, then I'm like, okay, I know I'm on the right path and I'm passionate about what I'm doing.
But
and then, like,
that, I'm thinking about that, but your space was always like a healing, elevating space. I mean, even you're talking about those little dorm rooms we lived in, like, it was always, you go in feeling one way, you're going to come out feeling another way. Like, you feel better, elevated. And I think that's a natural gift that we probably didn't have a word for it then, but that we can see definitely now.
Thank you. I always felt really communal and really community oriented, and I feel like Taji amplified that on 1,000 levels in terms of, like, me now actually reaching out on a global platform, right? Because we've had contributors from Kenya, we've had contributors from London on the cover, included inside, you know, the pages, literally all over the US. Like, shout out to Atlanta, even Brazil be coming through like, hey, we got the largest Black population, so, like, what are you saying, you know? And so, like, that really showed me that the community work that I want to do in the way that I think we need it is actually valid and important. And then transitioning into the adornment side of it for more so the healing, the protection, you know, the abundance side of it has been confirmation for more personal levels, like where I'm actually reaching people to say, like, here's this, you know, this actual tangible thing for you that you can wear, that you can hold dear, that represents you in some way, shape, or form, and that is going to provide, you know, something towards your needs in this time. And even I'll say, like, with the adornments, it's not, you're not always necessarily going to have the same thing, right? Like every now and then you might have a bracelet and you're like, I've had my bracelet for 3 years and all of a sudden it just popped. And I'm like, it did its job, you know, like now you have to move on to whatever your next thing is. It served its purpose and it's letting you know you reached it, you know, so now
that
where are
feels good
you
to
at?
me because I lose jewelry to science. So that feels good. Like it served its purpose and it has exited, and I can get something new.
Absolutely, absolutely. So those are just, you know, I feel like the communal tools and things that I'm able to share and also to receive back, because it makes me, helping people makes me feel good too. So it's not just all giving. I'm able to receive in that manner as well, which is like I always say, you know, it's the ma'at, it's the balance of life that we're supposed to have. So
that's so beautiful. This has been so good for me. Just seeing your face and talking to you. We gotta do this again.
yeah,
so I really your time, your energy, your gifts, and sharing them with us. Please let us know how we can find you, all the spaces, how they can get the cop some new jewelry, how they can cop a new magazine. Like, give us all the deets where they can find you online and in this internet world.
Yes. So the publication is Taji Mag. It's Taji. People often like to say Taj. That's not it. Taji actually means crown in Kiswahili, so we're gonna put some respect on the word. It's tajimag.com, but Taji Magazine on all social platforms, and adornedintaji.com and adornedintaji on all social platforms. And Charlene, thank you so much for having me. I'm so appreciative. The fact that you even reached out, I was like, that's my name. Of course I'm gonna do
First
it.
of all, I was like, they ain't gonna reply back. Like, I'm gonna have to like try to find her like agency to have to go through. Like,
no, you always got immediate access.
So I appreciate the love, the generosity. We wish you much success. I am going to cop something very, very soon.
Thank you.
And looking forward to rocking it and being just in community. I think we need more spaces where Black women, Black entrepreneurs can see themselves and see that support. It's hard. It's hard doing it alone. So any way we can support each other is definitely something that we want to do. So I appreciate you. You can find Starting With Today on all social media platforms at Starting With Today, except on Twitter, we're starting W with Today. You can find us online at startingwithtoday.org. My name is Charlene. You can find me at true_Charlene on all social media platforms. We'll see y'all again next week, same place, same time, with Amber Jackson of the Black Leaf Tea. Hey, and we are excited to have her, to talk to her about her business. So join us. We're going to save this. We're going to add it to YouTube, share it, all that, and we'll see y'all black.
See y'all black.
Black.
See y'all black.
Black people. All right, y'all be blessed.